All right, it's Monday, May 5th, the Krueger Show, getting it revved up here. Sam Betesh in the house. We're going to talk about the best teams in the NFC after both free agency and the draft. Let's go. Join us right now. All right, we're off and running on the Krueger Show. Hope everybody's having a great May the 5th. Happy Cinco de Mayo. Get your drink on.
Yes.
Thanks to Pig and a Pickle for being the title sponsor of the Krueger Show. Thanks to our good friends at Learn Key Upskill Academy as well. And we should tell you there's links in the description for all of our sponsors. But check out Pig and a Pickle, 2 locations, Emeryville, Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week from 11 a.m. till 8 p.m. or until they run out, and they do run out. So go say hi to Damon and Mary, get some brisket chili. The show is also sponsored by Learn Key Upskill Academy, an online learning platform designed to get you job ready in 6 months or less, whether you're interested in IT, cybersecurity, marketing, could be another high demand field that we're not mentioning. They offer over 30 certification programs to help you take that next step in your professional career. So check them out as well. They've been in business for a long time, and they've helped an awful lot of people. We're big fans of Learn Key. And we're also brought to you by Claw Daddy Arcades. Woo! That's right. They got 3 locations in Southern California, plus spots in Fresno and Modesto. They got a brand new location coming here in the Bay Area. And they're a great follow on Instagram. Follow them at Claw_Daddy_Arcades and find a location near you. And we could probably put Claw Daddy Arcades. We've got the other, there we go, right here. We'll do this. We'll put them both up there. You got Learn Key on the bottom over on the left, and you got Claw Daddy's logo on the bottom on the right. So thanks to Claw Daddy Arcades, thanks to Learn Key Upskill Academy, and thanks to our good friends at Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. All right, we're off and running. It's a Monday. Hope everybody's having a good day. I'm going to share the screen because we're going to discuss today the NFC. And here are the NFC championship odds right now through the various betting sites out there. The Eagles are the consensus number 1 team in the NFC, followed by Detroit, Washington, the Niners, Green Bay, the Rams, the Bucks, the Vikings, the Bears, and the Seahawks. Cardinals there as well. And then the bottom 5 teams are the Cowboys, Falcons, Panthers, Giants, and Saints. So we're going to go through the top 10 and talk about arrow up, arrow down. Do we like these teams more? Do we like them less? Sammy, good to see you, man. How are we going to do this? Are we going to go one at a time? Who's going to go first?
So let's do this, Larry. First of all, this is a tremendous idea because I just, everything to me in the NFC, it's one team that you circled that I think is the linchpin in all of this. And it's obviously you're familiar with them, and we got the red in the background, but the Niners are this team. When you look at Vegas and you look at these odds, it's the Niners who are sort of gone yesterday and here today, right? Like you take last season and it's like, okay, Eagles won the NFC, Lions were the 1 seed, Eagles won the Super Bowl, but all of it is under this cloud of, well, the Niners were vying to be the best team in the NFC, and then injuries, we can call it, took them out of what would be the 2024 season. So if we're slotting them back into it, how does that ruffle things up? How much do we believe in Washington based on them kind of maybe taking the Niners' place in that? I just think it all is predicated on where the Niners stand. So why don't we just go 10 through 1 maybe? Let's take a look and speak about each of these from both of our perspectives on, all right, if Vegas sees it as this, and then remind everybody also, it's 7 NFC teams that are going to make the playoffs. So anything we say, 7 or below, that's a line that we got to keep our eye on, because that means we're either saying that this team, from a power ranking standpoint, is making the playoffs, or they're not. So you might be excited that we think your team is a 9 when you thought they were a 13, but that still means they're not in the playoffs. So I think that's really important to make sure that we have this sort of line of demarcation between 7 and 8, because that's an important one.
Okay, so here on the screen, I'm showing you the odds of the top 10 teams by odds. in the NFC. Eagles are 1, Detroit 2, Commanders 3, Niners 4, Packers 5, Rams 6, Buccaneers 7, Vikings 8, Bears 9, Seahawks rounding out the top 10. All right, so let's go from 10 to the top. And it's funny. It's like do we want to go with what we picked as 10, or do we want to go with the what the odds are as far as the league odds? If we started with what the league odds are, then we would be talking about Seattle. And, so
why don't we do this? Why don't we
yeah.
do this? So bottom line is if Vegas sees Seattle at 10, how outrageous is that according to where you've got it projected for 2025?
I like Seattle more than Vegas does. I think Seattle's a good organization. I think they're a winning team. They moved on from Geno Smith. I think that was a key element for them. This is also year 2 of Michael McDonald as their head coach. And I just think that Seattle's going to be better than people think. I think they had a really, really prosperous draft. I like what they got done, and I think they're a team. I've got Seattle as the 8th best team with the arrow pointing up. The league says they're the 10th best team, but I mean, look at their draft. They needed help for their O-line. They got Gray Zabel. They got a big time safety in Nick Emanwari. You got another receiving tight end in Elijah Arroyo. Milroe gives them an element at quarterback down the road, I think is a good thing. And, then they also added some other guys. I mean, Ricky White, the third from UNLV, is a good receiver. Damian Martinez from Miami, I think is a really good running back. And I look at that Seattle team and I think, you know what? They're better. They're better than some teams. I think they're better than a lot of people think. Not only that, Seattle, if you look at them as beyond the draft, they brought in Cooper Kupp. They brought in Marquez Valdez-Scantling. They got rid of DK Metcalf. They brought in Josh Jones, the offensive tackle. They brought in Drew Lock and Sam Darnold at quarterback. So they really did add quite a bit. On defense, they brought in DeMarcus Lawrence to help rush the passer. So I think that helps them quite a bit. And then Emanwari on the back end. So I think Mike McDonald, feels like he can scheme together the defense, and they needed more help on offense. But I like Seattle. I think Seattle with Sam Darnold, with a new offensive coordinator who I think is going to help them run the football a whole lot better than they have. Clint Kubiak is the new OC. They're going to run it better. I think their offensive line's improved. I like what I see from Seattle. I think Seattle's going to be a surprise team. They may be even better than the 8th best team, but I've got them as the 8th best team in the conference, better than what these odds say.
All right, so odds say 10. You've got them at 8, and I have them at 9. Now, remember, that means neither one of us has Seattle as a playoff team. And if you remember last season, this puts them close to where they were last season because week 17 is when this team was eliminated. They were oddly eliminated in the Falcons and Commanders outcome of Sunday Night Football week 17. Everyone thought they would be alive down to the last weekend in that tiebreaker with the Rams, but there was an odd strength of schedule tiebreak that knocked them out so that their final game didn't even matter. And they ended up with the same record as the Rams, but it was sort of irrelevant week 18. This is a Sam Darnold conversation only, Larry. I mean, this is what we're talking about, right? Geno Smith or Sam Darnold, are they better or worse with that? Because you can very much say DK out, Cooper Kupp in. That feels like you're gonna get your production there the way you had it. And it's just, do we believe in 14 wins from Sam Darnold, or are we looking at the last 2 games we saw from Darnold with the Vikings? Right? Is that the loss to Detroit with the entire conference on the line? Right? That's the difference between 1 seed and 5 seed for them. They lose that game, and then he sacked 9 times by the Rams in the wild card, Darnold with the Vikings. So I would say I just am not so convinced as of yet that the Seahawks are demonstratively better here with Sam Darnold. He doesn't have to plummet here. This is not a plummeting from the pack, but Seattle, look, Vegas has 10. I'm going to say 9, and neither one of them Neither one of us see them as a playoff team. And I'm just going to stick to that. They're going to have to prove that they were at one point, they were winning this division last season, and through the entirety of the season could not hang on. And I don't see it happening with Darnold either.
I think Darnold is going to miss Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison. I mean, there's no question. Yeah,
I mean,
and now Valdez-Scantling doesn't have good hands. Smith Najigba is a good receiver for sure. Cooper Kupp's older at this point, but they also got Torrey Horton and Ricky White, and so they added some other receivers. But yeah, I think they're a team that's going to win some games, but I think they'll just miss the playoffs. So I would say Seattle at number 8. You have them at number 9. They have them at number 10. All right, let's take a look at.
So now that would mean 9 looks like Chicago.
So they have 9 as Chicago. Okay, I don't have Chicago making the playoffs. I just think Chicago is a good team, but they're not a great team. And I think they've made, when you make that many changes to your offensive line, you don't bet. That's not a 1-year thing. They made a lot of changes. Now I like Luther Burden, right? They got Luther Burden, and I like Kyle Monangai, and I like Monangai, and I also like Colston Loveland. They got 3 nice weapons, but new left guard, new center, new right guards. They have a totally new interior offensive line. I'm not a big Caleb Williams fan. I think the Bears on defense they added Grady Jarrett, so that should help a little bit to their defensive front. They got Shamar Turner, but I think their defense is okay, but not great. And I think offensively their offensive line changes eventually will be pretty good. I like some of the weapons they added, but I don't think Caleb's ready. So I don't have the Bears making the playoffs, and I don't have the Bears in the top 10.
Yeah, I'm outside the top 10 as well on that. I see the Bears as the 12th best team in the conference, which is a little better than what happened last season. But this comes down to Ben Johnson, really. Do we believe in, do you transfer everything that happened positively in Detroit and bring that immediately over to Chicago and make that kind of a difference? I mean, look, Washington with Jaden Daniels turned it around with they cleaned house. And it worked incredibly well. But is that going to happen here for the Bears immediately? The problem here for the Bears getting beyond 12 or 11 and really talking about being 7 or 8 as a playoff team, it's really, you just look at the division, right? Like how does it happen? How do you stack them? You really got to essentially be as good as Green Bay, and they're just not yet. The Bears are just not there yet. The Colston Loveland thing, I do like. They supported Caleb here, as you said, with all of the offensive line moves, but this just comes down to whether we think Ben Johnson is going to immediately make it happen for the Bears. And the only reason I don't love Caleb Williams is probably because we saw what Jaden Daniels did last season. And it's sort of like in our mind, there's always going to be that, all right, which one of these quarterbacks? Obviously, Caleb drafted ahead of Jaden. And so we start to say, maybe we like one guy over the other. Over the course of a decade, we're really going to make this decision. But right now, I agree with you on that. It all changed for Chicago. This was a team. There was a moment in time where last season, Larry, we were saying, wow, 4 teams from the NFC North could make the playoffs. I mean, it looked like it at one point in time, and what changed it all was the Hail Mary from Jaden Daniels. That Hail Mary against the Bears, they completely fell apart, unraveled, got their coach fired, disaster. Obviously, the Thanksgiving Day debacle with the clock at the end of that game. But this team emotionally could not hold it together. Obviously, Ben Johnson's going to change that, but I'm with you. Not a playoff team. I think they're 12th best, and I just think the division is too difficult.
They went 1-5 in the division last year.
Yuck.
Detroit won 15 games.
Yeah.
Minnesota won 14 games. Green Bay won 11 games. The Bears won 5 games. So, those teams were all over plus 100 or better in point differential. The Bears were minus 60. So the Bears suck. The Bears are awful. They're not going anywhere. And, I would say Caleb Williams is going to get worse before he gets better. I'm not a Caleb Williams fan.
You just don't like him. Now, did you like? I mean, at USC,
No, I didn't like him.
coming out.
No,
Yeah,
I said he was a bust. I
Wow.
loved, to me, in this last draft, I loved Jaden Daniels and I loved Michael Penix.
Wow.
And the rest of those guys I didn't like. I didn't like Bo Nix, didn't like May, didn't like Caleb.
Jaden was not consensus at all, Larry. So that's
no. I love Jaden and I love Penix. I mean, to me, Jaden was my favorite. Penix was my second. Penix has the best arm. I think Jalen was the most refined. I wasn't convinced on the other guys. I mean, obviously Drake May had a pretty decent year. Caleb had some good moments, but I think Caleb is going to be bad. I don't think Caleb's going to be a good quarterback in Chicago. I mean, Chicago never has a good quarterback for years, and it doesn't seem like it matters who it is. But I really think he's going to backslide, and it's going to be real obvious because the weapons and the surrounding cast are getting better, but the performances are going to get worse, and people are going to be like, "Oh, more pressure, more heat's coming down on Williams." And as far as the head coach, I mean that he's going to change things for the positive over time, but I don't think it happens overnight. So I would say that him leaving Detroit probably is going to hurt Detroit more than it's going to help Chicago.
Yeah.
So I like the Bears to not make the playoffs. So that the Bears were number 9 on the list, number 8 on the list of the Minnesota Vikings.
Oh yeah.
Now I have Minnesota as the 10th best team. Now I think Minnesota is going to have a little bit of a backslide. They had everything go right for them last year. They went 14-3. They went 8-1 at home, 6-2 on the road, 4-2 in the division, 9-3 in the conference. They outscored their opponents by 100 points. They had a really, really good year. I just think that Minnesota, going from Sam Darnold to now a rookie quarterback, I mean, that's a big one. You're going to J.J. McCarthy, and then you've got Sam Howell sitting behind him. And, I think there's a chance that Sam Howell might be better than J.J. McCarthy. So, I mean, that right there, I think creates kind of a weird situation. They brought in Donovan Jackson at left guard. They brought in Ryan Kelly and Will Freeze to the offensive line. And they brought in Ty Felton at receiver to go with Jefferson and Addison and Naylor. They still have Aaron Jones. They have Hawkinson. So it's not a terrible offensive unit. It's got some good players in it. I just think the quarterback, I think Darnold played at a pretty high level last year, and I think the odds are that McCarthy will not play at that high level this year. They did bring in Jonathan Allen and Javon Hargrave to their D-line, but both those guys' best football has already been played. So I don't love what they did to their defensive line. I don't think they got a ton of talent on defense in the draft or in free agency. So I like the Vikings to kind of backslide a little bit.
Yeah, the Vikings could not beat the last season. I mean, obviously 14 wins, but if you look at the losses, they couldn't beat the Rams or the Lions. That's what it came down to. And I see this season as not being able to beat the Packers. They beat the Packers in close games last season. I don't see that happening again. I've got them at 11. I mean, I've got a significant, this is a team that's not going to be sniffing the playoffs and the way they were vying for a 1 seed last season. This is going to be remarkably different. I'm with you. The rookie quarterback thing, once in a while, yeah, Jaden Daniels slides in there and you've got a rookie quarterback that takes off. I just think O'Connell, with the consistency of carrying the quarterback over, would have been great. I think I would have been all for Minnesota taking another step if there was that consistency with Darnold. But now the JJ thing, I don't love it. The receivers are clearly going to do their thing but I just, God, JJ looked great with Darnold, didn't he? I mean, I thought one of the best throws of the season, Minnesota in the first game against Green Bay, Darnold hit back shoulder where he wasn't even looking, Jefferson in the end zone. It was just such a beautiful pass. And I just keep going back to that game. Darnold took such a step. It was all working so well. And JJ, Larry, we're talking about half of a preseason game against the Raiders that we're all convinced JJ McCarthy is the guy, right? I mean, he injures himself we're talking a preseason game against the Raiders where he looks great. He's injured in that game and everyone says, oh, it could have been. And Darnold comes in and plays better than we ever could have expected from JJ or Darnold, certainly. So I can't love it right now. I'm sorry. It's just like that taste is still in my mouth that Darnold was the guy. And JJ, you and I have not seen enough from JJ McCarthy to say that we're looking at 12 wins here. And it's yeah. So I don't see it. I got Minnesota and Chicago right next to each other in these power rankings. Minnesota, Chicago back to back in this for me. I think it looks more like what we expected from Minnesota heading into the 2024 season for 2025.
So they have Minnesota at 8. I have Minnesota at 10. You have Minnesota at
11.
So out. All right, let's move on to number 9. They have the Bucks at number 9, and this is the first dramatic departure from the odds from what I have. I have Tampa number 2.
Yeah.
I like Tampa. I like what I've seen from Tampa. First of all, Tampa, they've got a lot going on. I mean, offensively at the end of the year, you got Baker Mayfield playing his best ball. You got Bucky Irving in the backfield, who's really part of a 3-headed monster with Rachaad White and Sean Tucker. They also added Josh Williams from LSU after the draft. So, and then you've got decent weapons. You got Cade Otton at tight end, Payne Durham, not bad. And then you've got Godwin and Evans and Jalen McMillan, who had a real good rookie year. He was their 3rd-round pick. They got Raheem Jarrett. And then this year, they added Emeka Egbuka from Ohio State, who I think is the most polished receiver of any of them, and Tez Johnson. So they added 2 receivers. They now have a really good group of receivers. Their offensive line's not bad. I mean, Tristan Wirfs at left tackle, Graham Barton at center, Cody Mauch at right guard, Luke Gadecki at right tackle, Bretterson's the left guard. They drafted they got Jake Majors after the draft. I think Tampa offensively has got a lot of good things going on. Now, defensively, they added Hassan Reddick to their defensive line that has Kalijah Cansey, Vita Vea, and Logan Hall. They drafted 2 really good defensive linemen in David Walker, who I think is one of the best edge rushers in this entire draft class, and Elijah Roberts, who from SMU, the former Miami Hurricane, who also is a pretty good player. So I kind of liked what they added up front. And then they, on the back end, this team already has Antoine Winfield, Jamel Dean, Zion McCollum. They've got some decent DBs, but they drafted Benjamin Morrison in the 2nd round out of Notre Dame and Jacob Parrish in the 3rd round out of K-State. So you get 2 really good corners. So I think they gave their defense some teeth with the 2 pass rushers, or 3 pass rushers if you want to include Reddick. They added a couple good corners in the draft as well. And then offensively, they got a nice collection of guys, and they added 2 really good receivers that I think can help them right away. So I like Tampa, man. I like Tampa, and I've got Tampa as the 2nd best team in the conference.
Number 2 is a little rich for my blood, but definitely a playoff team. Let's say that. I got Tampa here at 6, and it's really more about what I think about the teams ahead of them than I do to say that Tampa's falling. It's just that you have them at 2, so that's a bold one. But I've got them clean in this, and in fact, even at 6 in a power ranking, I've got them as they're the top team in the South. Certainly, again. So this is a playoff team all the way. Larry, I'll ask you a question.
10-win team last year,
and how about this? This is the number for Tampa. 5 straight seasons. How many NFC teams have made the playoffs? 5 straight seasons. One team.
Yeah, I would say maybe Tampa.
That's it.
Yeah.
I mean, both Philly and the Niners over that span, not as consistent here as Tampa. Tampa going for 6 straight into the playoffs. This is an impressive team, and what they've got in Baker Mayfield is special. This is chip on his shoulder. Baker thinking that he proved everything in Cleveland to win a playoff game against the Steelers, to then have that interesting path through Carolina and the Rams, etc., and to wind up here. It's worked out so beautifully for him. And that moment at the end of the regular season where they're all hugging Mike Evans, getting his another 10,000. I mean, how incredible is what Mike Evans continues to do. This is 2 seasons in a row where I would have been not shocked in any way to see Evans' production fall, and it has not happened. Plus the injury to Godwin. Now we're looking at a healthy Godwin coming into this season. He's going to play more than he did last season, obviously. This Tampa team I like a lot. You said it about Egbuka. That's maybe the most plug and play, certainly at that position from receiver in this draft as we've got. Abuga's a guy that everyone thinks is going to immediately make an impact on this offense. I see it the same way. They got a lot out of the running game last season. And again, the loss to Washington in the playoffs, I mean, this is easily a team that could have been in the divisional round. That was a last-second loss there to Washington. We know how special it was for the Commanders last season. The consistency, the same thing I don't like about Minnesota is what I like about Tampa here, in that you're keeping it for another season. And obviously, as a Philly guy, I'm a big Hassan Reddick fan. As a Niner fan, you know the impact Reddick can have in destroying Purdy's shoulder in that NFC Championship game a couple of years ago.
Elbow.
Yeah, sorry, elbow, not shoulder. Yeah, exactly. Reddick still has plays in him, and I believe in that move. And I like Tampa to essentially stand pat to where they were, but they could make noise in the playoffs, much like they did 2 seasons ago. I could see it again. I like him at 6.
Okay, so you have Tampa at 6. The odds have Tampa at 7. I have Tampa at 2. All right, let's go to the Rams are next. They're 6th on the list odds wise. I have the Rams higher up as well. Okay, yeah. I have the Rams at 3. Now, the Rams won the division last year. They won 10-7. They went 5-4 at home, 5-3 on the road, 4-2 in the division, 500 in the conference. They actually got outscored on the season by 19 points. They were the only team that finished in first place in their division with a negative point differential. How about that?
Remember how ugly the NFC West was, by the way, Larry, last season. I mean, we talk about how bad it was for the Niners, but remember that this division looked like it was anybody's. Each of these teams, I think outside of the Niners, each of these teams were in first place for some significant portion of the season last year.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's wide open. I like the Rams in the 3 hole in the NFC. I like what I'm seeing from the Rams. I mean, okay, so last year they win the division. They win 10 games. Stafford's still doing it. You now have a trio of runners in Kyron Williams, Blake Corum, and Jarquez Hunter. So I really kind of like that. You know, you still have Stafford. You got Jimmy G backing him up. Higbee at tight end is healthy. They added Terrence Ferguson from Oregon, who is one of the best tight ends. They also got Anthony Torres after the draft, who's a pretty decent tight end from Toledo. And then offensive line wise, I mean, you know, they've improved their offensive line over the last couple of years, you know, adding guys like Steve Avila in the draft. They added Willie Lampkin in the draft, who was one of my favorite offensive linemen. Receiver wise, they add Devontae Adams to Puka Nacua and Tutu Atwell. They got rid of Cooper Kupp. They also added Kanata Mumpfield from Pittsburgh, who's a pretty good receiver in the draft. So that's kind of interesting. And then on the defensive side of the ball, you know, they've got Chris Shula as the defensive coordinator. And I thought the Rams had maybe the most underrated free agent addition. They signed Poona Ford away from the Chargers. Poona is a real monster in the middle as far as he's a run stuffer. He's a plugger inside. And now the Rams have Poona inside to go with Kobe Turner. And you have Byron Young, Agent Zero, to go with Braden Fisk and Josiah Stewart from Michigan. So I kind of like what the Rams did to their defensive front. I mean, they've got a pretty good defensive front. They added Chris Paul at linebacker. Thought that was a really nice addition. You know, the secondary wise, Quentin Lake's a good player. You got Akella Witherspoon played well last year. Cameron Kitchens, Cam Curl, Darius Williams. You know, you still have Jared Verse and Braden Fisk. So to me, I like the Rams. I think the Rams are getting better on both sides of the ball. I like them as the 3rd best team in the conference.
You and I are lockstep on this. I've got Rams winning the division again and the 3. Now, the Niners, this could swap easily because you'll see that, you know, the Niners and the Rams are close in my power rankings, and it comes down to which one of them ends up winning this division. And it's the Rams had 2 defensive rookie of the year finalists. That's pretty outstanding. I mean, that was a big one to see what Verse and Fisk did last season. That was special. You said it. Defensive line made a difference for this team. There's only one thing I really don't like, and that is that the Giants were able to jump the Rams. And this doesn't affect power rankings for this upcoming season, but the Rams were trying to get Jackson Dart. The Rams wanted Jackson Dart. Obviously, we know how this thing went. There were the negotiations with Stafford. Remember, Stafford was going to be the most exciting name of this free agency. And then finally the Rams got it done and inked him. And so he stayed. But they were clearly thinking about maybe, that tells you there was a stretch of this season where the Rams were not convinced that Stafford was the guy that could get them back to a Super Bowl. So that tells you inside the building, there's a shred of doubt there on Stafford. So we've got to at least keep that in mind when both of us, you and I, have him here at 3. But if Stafford does not regress, then this team is right back where it was. The Devontae Adams thing, Larry, that could be special. Look, there were games last season where Devontae Adams was the best fantasy player in football, and that was with what neither one of us think is the best rendition of Aaron Rodgers here. So I love this with McVay, Adams, and Stafford. This could be a tremendous team. And remember, the Rams are convinced, Larry, that they were 20 yards away, not from beating the Eagles, but winning the Super Bowl. Because in their mind, here's how it went. If the Rams are able in the snow to complete that final drive, which, yes, Jalen Carter blew up, but if the Rams complete that final drive against the Eagles and win that game, remember they are hosting the NFC Championship game against the Commanders. And then what we saw the Eagles do to the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, the Rams had 15 sacks over 2 playoff games. They sacked the Vikings 9 times and the Eagles 6 times. So you have to think that front would have disrupted Patrick Mahomes just as much as the Eagles did. They're convinced of that. And then it just comes down to whether you think they would have beaten Washington in a game in LA, when, by the way, this team didn't even technically have a home playoff game because they had to play that home playoff game in Arizona due to the wildfires in LA. So the Rams are really thinking they're special coming into this next season. And I don't know if you remember this, Larry, it was overtime in week 1 when the Rams in Detroit had the Lions on the ropes. In fact, the Rams could have won that game week 1 against Detroit. They blew it on 3 different plays. Kyron Williams stepped out of bounds when the clock could have otherwise run down significantly. They also dropped an interception of Goff late in that game. And to ice the game, Stafford missed a wide open Cooper Kupp on a first down that would have salted the game away. So that, and look, overtime was all David Montgomery, and the game was never even really close once it got to overtime. But the Rams were close on a couple of different. The Rams were close last season. Of course, we also have to remember this will be a different Niners team out there against them. So that's one to consider. But I've got, just like you, Rams at 3 here for me.
Rams have one sleeper to keep track of. His name's Mario Williams.
Oh.
He played at SC, and then he did nothing but score touchdowns. He's a 5'9" slot receiver, but he's got major skills. He went to Tulane this year, had 9 touchdowns for Tulane. The guy's really, really good. They got him as an undrafted free agent. Look for Mario Williams to impact. It's a forgettable name, but
not really. Think about the history of the NFL draft. Mario Williams is a pretty significant name, actually.
Yeah,
back in the day.
But I mean, they have Tutu Atwell, they have Puka, they have Devontae. They'll be talking about Jordan Whittington. They'll talk a little bit about this Kanata Mumfield, Xavier Smith. They've got other guys there, but trust me, when they get down to it, Mario Williams is going to be a player for the Rams, and that's going to be a great undrafted free agent. All right, so the Rams were on the rankings here, 6th on the list. So now we move up to number 5, and that's the Green Bay Packers. I have the Packers at 7 instead of 5. The thing about Green Bay is interesting is that they went receiver in the first round for the first time in a long time. They've got a lot of weapons. I mean, Dobbs, Matthew Golden, Jaden Reed, Dontavion Wicks, Christian Watson, Savion Williams, McCole Hardman, Tulu Griffin, Bo Melton, Tucker Kraft, Luke Musgrave, Josh Jacobs, Marshawn Lloyd. I mean, they got dudes. They got all kinds of weapons. And they improved their offensive line. They added Anthony Belton and John Williams. They signed Aaron Banks away from the Niners. So, I think there's a lot to like about the Packers on offense. Defensively, Kenny Clark, Devontae Wyatt, Lucas Van Ness, Rashawn Gary up front. They also added Warren Brinson from Georgia and Barron Sorrell from Texas and Nazir Stackhouse from Georgia in the draft. They picked up Isaiah Simmons at linebacker. They added Nate Hobbs from the Raiders. That's a good addition in free agency as the nickelback. So it sounds like they're shopping Jair Alexander. They may move him. I like Green Bay, though there's some weird vibe there in Green Bay between Love and the head coach, and there's some weird vibe there. These guys didn't. I don't know if they have what kind of relationship Jordan Love has with their head coach Matt LaFleur, but to me that's a weird one. That is a weird one. I like Gutekunst, the GM. I like Rich Bisaccia, the special teams coach. I like Jeff Hafley, the defensive coordinator, good coach. But I got Green Bay in the 7 spot. Even though they were, Vegas here has them in the 5th spot. I'll put them in the 7th spot. I like them, but something tells me that there's something amiss going on between the quarterback and one of his best receivers, or one of his best, the head coach and the quarterback. There were several times where LaFleur seemed frustrated by Love and Love seemed frustrated by LaFleur. And I don't think that's going to change. I think that, more years together, that probably, we'll see if that smooths out. My guess is it won't. And I've got Green Bay in the 7 hole.
All right, so you've got them as a playoff team, and I do too, but I want to bring a team up that we may not get to today, and I want us to save 10 seconds at least to talk about them later. But the Cowboys is 8 for me, okay? So this comes down to whether I think the Cowboys or the Packers are going to make the playoffs. I guess on my list, I have the Cowboys as out, but I want to address that a little later. But in regards to the Packers, we both have them at 7, but I want to talk about them as a playoff team. Last season, the Packers season really came down to this. They would have been in a much better position than facing Philly in the wild card on the road. I mean, imagine that if they win that division, so many different things, but they could not beat Detroit, Minnesota, or Philly. That's their season. Their season is simply that, Larry. Look, I mean, this is a team that won 11 games. The 6 losses come down to simply that. They could not beat Minnesota twice. They couldn't beat Detroit, and they lost to Philly week 1. And that really spelled their season for the most part. There's also another divisional Bears loss in there. But Jordan Love got paid, earned his money, and essentially his best 2 games are still last season. The playoff game against the Cowboys where he destroyed the Cowboys, and almost, not doing it, but almost beating the Niners in the divisional round was the other game that we think, wow, okay, Jordan Love was really the guy. He was on it. Interesting what you say about LaFleur. I was so convinced that Aaron Rodgers never should have left LaFleur, because with LaFleur and Rodgers, that was 13 wins, 13 wins, 13 wins. And then Rodgers is saying he's got an issue with LaFleur, which I can't imagine how he didn't just think this is going to work out because this guy gets it. I think LaFleur is key here. I think he's going to figure it out with Love. The Packers, I can't quite pinpoint what it is that I like that they do. The Packers are sort of the Steelers of the NFC to me, Larry, right? Like, I don't exactly know what makes them good year in and year out. And it obviously has a lot to do with the head coach, but there's something there. And they must believe in Love and what this offense can do. If they made Matthew Golden the number 1 pick, they must really believe in where this offense is headed. We're talking 20 years. Aaron Rodgers is rolling over saying, how did you finally draft a wide receiver in the first round? You didn't do it when I was here, but you're doing it for Jordan Love. Interesting that you see a little break there. And the talk seems to be that Jair Alexander is going to be there. It seems to be that now that is sort of being massaged the right way, and he'll be there. And depending on what you really think of him, you could probably use that money a little smarter and wiser. But I like Green Bay. I don't love them. And to be more exciting next time, maybe I'll slot Dallas in as a playoff team and not Green Bay. That's where it could get interesting, but I think it is going to come down to those two.
It's interesting too, because if Jordan Love gets hurt, then it's Malik Willis, Willis and Sean Clifford, and that's a major drop.
They played shockingly well with Willis last season, but also
they ran the ball 53 times.
Neither one of us brought it up. Jordan Love did get injured. So you talked about a lot of what they did to improve the offensive line, et cetera, but Love got hurt, and that affected this team.
No doubt. And there's a weird vibe here. I don't know. There's something about Green Bay that says stay away, but I love their weapons. And, adding Nate Hobbs on the back end is a really, really nice addition. I don't love their defense overall, but, we'll see. I definitely think Green Bay is a playoff team. I have them at number 7 overall. All right, let's jump to the Niners.
Let's do it.
They have the Niners at 4 on the list. I also have the Niners at 4. I have the Niners at 4 in the NFC. Now, Um, it's an interesting year for the 49ers because it's a major there's a major projection going on here, and there's all kinds of questions. I mean, there's questions all over the place. Is Brandon Ayuk going to play this year? Is he going to play a month? Is he going to play? Is he not going to be ready till November? Is Ricky Pearsall going to step up? Do they have enough receivers if Brandon Ayuk doesn't play until November? How good's the offensive line? Can Trent Williams stay healthy? He missed 7 games last year. Who's the left guard? Is Brock Purdy's contract getting done? Is Christian McCaffrey going to return at the Christian McCaffrey level from where he was at a couple years ago? Or is he going to be a shadow of that? And then, of course, they could have 3/4 of a brand new defensive line. They could have as many as 6 new starters on defense. I would say CJ West, Alfred Collins, Mikael Williams, Nick Martin, and Marquise Siegel, as well as Upton Stout, all have a chance to start. I would say those 6 players all potentially may start on their defense. So that's a lot of youth. 6 rookies on your defense. And then who's your kicker? You got a brand new special teams coordinator you got a lot of questions. So the Niners have a lot of questions, but they also have a lot of talent. And they have a quarterback in his prime. They got a head coach in his prime. They still have a lot of good weapons. And I just think they're going to figure it out. I think they did enough in the draft to have a representative effort on both offense, defense, and special teams. The kicker is a big question mark. The left guard's a big question mark. But I think 49ers are going to be the 4th best team in the conference behind only Philly, Tampa, and the Rams.
Interesting here. It comes down to the Rams or the Niners for the division, and the power rankings could flip. You and I are both sitting in the same place on this. Rams at 3, Niners at 4 at the moment. And there's just something about last season that we can't quite wipe from our mind. That's what it comes down to. Because do we believe that it's all the injuries from last season, or do we believe that simply there's a window and sometimes those things do close? To me, the window, whatever you want to do with the window, it's open again because of Robert Saleh. That's the name we haven't mentioned so far. Because whatever the draft was and whatever free agency was, and we know the free agency wasn't really pretty, but you got to add Saleh to that. If you're talking about what happened to this team and the difference, more often than not, it was easy last season to say this defense does not look the same without Saleh. And of course, what Saleh did in New York is nothing we're all going to celebrate. They're not having a parade for him in New York at all, but there was a lot that went wrong in New York. Saleh was amazing in this spot with Shanahan in the past. And if we think that he can return this scheme to form, and you've still got so much out of Bosa and you got Warner, this is still a team ready to be at that level defensively. George Kittle, new contract. That's nice. Everyone sees him. And again, if Kelsey's got, Kelsey's kind of trending in the wrong direction, we still think Kittle is at that elite level. If that's the case, you're going to get every bit from Purdy as you did. The Ayuk thing is interesting. And we also didn't mention no Debo. What do we really think here? This is going to be, I always say that Shanahan's playbook probably has an entire chapter just called Debo. And it's all the different things that he can do with Debo from a gadget standpoint outside of just lining up a wide receiver. And without that, it just ripples through the entire offense and puts everybody in a different spot. I think you get more out of McCaffrey because Debo's there. You certainly had gotten more out of Ayuk over time. You get more out of Kittle. There's so much that you can do there. And without him, is there another guy? Now, without question, Pearsall is having a better offseason this year than he did last year. I mean, so that's fine. And Pearsall will probably be that guy. But, and I just don't know. Can you slot it all right back in, Larry? Can you just say McCaffrey's healthy, Purdy will have a deal, Kittle's got a deal, Ayuk will eventually be there? Can you just, is it easy enough to say, and you got Saleh back, right? Is it easy enough to just say, can we turn the clock? Can we just wipe out one season and take it back to we're in overtime in the Super Bowl against the Chiefs, and we're just as good at that as that moment? A lot you got to get through. But one other thing, feather in the cap for Niners fans, Larry. According to Warren Sharp, this is the easiest projected strength of schedule that you've got. Now, we don't know the dates, but we know the opponents. This, if you base it on Vegas win total projections, is the easiest strength of schedule. The one silver lining when you finish last in your division, last place schedule. and the Niners will have that going for them. So that could play the difference here in a team that both of us really like. Fourth best in Vegas, fourth best for you and me.
Last year they had a tough schedule, and not only that, their rest was just horrible. They had a terrible rest schedule, and their biggest game of rest disadvantage was against Seattle, and that was a game that they absolutely had to have. So I would say that the 49ers with a much easier schedule, without having the Super Bowl, hangover, without having the shortened off season, I think there's a lot of factors that will benefit them. So I think they'll play pretty good. It's a young defense. They'll have some mistakes. There'll be some growing pains, but I would say 49ers are still going to wind up with an easy schedule, being a 10-win, 11-win type football team. And so I have them at number 4 overall in the NFC. Now, number 3 overall in the NFC, according to the odds, is the Commanders. And I have the Commanders at number 5. Now, a lot of people really think the Commanders are just taking off. They're just, but I'm seeing a sophomore slump for Jaden Daniels. He caught everybody by surprise last year. They had a bunch of new faces last year. New regime. Everybody loves everybody. And I just thought that they really took advantage of all the newness last year. But now here we go. It's year 2. And I think there'll be some growing pains. Daniels will maybe have a little bit of a sophomore slump. They did bring in Laramie Tunsil, and Sam Cosmi is hopefully he's healthy at right guard, but they drafted Josh Connerly out of Oregon, and they brought in Nate Herbig, and they brought in Laramie Tunsil. So they've improved their offensive line, I think, potentially on paper. You added Debo and Michael Gallup and Jalen Lane in the draft at receiver. So that's kind of interesting. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt at running back, as well as Demetric Felton added to Eckler and Robinson and Chris Rodriguez. Defensively, you added Kinlaw, Dietrich Wise, Eddie Goldman up front. That's a lot of slow players. And Trey Amos in the secondary, Kane Medrano in the draft, Robert McDaniel's a good undrafted player. Same with Carlin Vigors. I just think Ricky Barber's not a bad undrafted player either. I like Washington, but I don't love their defensive additions. Kinlaw, Dietrich Wise, Eddie Goldman, and I think there's a very good chance for a sophomore slump. So I have Washington falling down to the 5 spot in the NFC.
Well, this is the big swing for you and me, Larry. Washington, number 1 here. I'm looking at this with Washington on top in the NFC in my rankings. It comes down to whether we believe that certain things are a trend and coincidental, or if they're a trend because it's just reality year in and year out. But it's been 20 years since a team has won the NFC East in back-to-back seasons. And you would certainly think, with as strong as we feel about these teams coming out of one season to the next, that it would have happened. But yet the Eagles, the Super Bowl season where they lost the Chiefs a couple seasons ago, no, they followed that up by, in the last 2 weeks of the season, giving the division away to Dallas. So if we think that this will happen again, that means the Eagles don't win this division. And if you're looking across the landscape, clearly Washington's the team to put in their place. So if that's the case, if they're not the best in the division, they're not going to be best in the NFC. Washington as the best team in the NFC. Tunsil and Debo are 2 fantastic moves. I like the Connerly, as you mentioned, in the draft. Yes, and that's going to protect. But the paired with Tunsil is why I really like it. Are we going to get this rejuvenated version of Laramie Tunsil minus the bong mask? Is this going to be finally Laramie Tunsil at that level, playing for a team that he thinks can win a Super Bowl? And Debo, you know it, Larry. If Debo gives this team an attitude and a toughness on offense, if he can do everything that he did for the Niners. Now, of course, injuries play a factor. You know it better than anybody, Larry. Debo's on the field or not. And that makes a huge difference. And it's probably very disruptive to the quarterback and the play caller because, as I said, you've got so many different plays designed for Debo. And then all of a sudden on Thursday, you realize, oh, we don't have him now. And when you're prepping for 1 week, for one game, etc., that just kills what you've done. So if Debo's healthy, that makes a massive difference. And if he does, I see Washington as the best team. I see them taking that leap. Obviously, a tremendous game they played in Detroit in the divisional round, and it's going to take that kind of an effort. This team did beat the Eagles. Yes, Hurts got injured in that game, but Washington and Daniel specifically found a way to come back in that game despite 5 turnovers. So Washington can play with the Eagles, and I see that being the difference this season. Washington at number 1.
I hear you, but I'm pushing back. I mean, there's no, I look at Washington and I don't see a good defense coming off especially up front. You're adding Kinlaw and Dietrich Wise. Your edge rushers are Dorrance Armstrong, Dietrich Wise, Cleveland Farrell. That is in my opinion, that ain't good enough. I like all those guys, but I don't love any of them, and I don't think they have enough rush. And then, to be completely honest, I kind of think that we're looking at Washington, and they had a really nice year this last year. But Washington's old in a lot of key spots. I mean, Daniels is young, but Ertz is old, and Debo's old, and McLaurin's old. And Michael Gallup's old. I mean, when I say they're old, these guys are all 29 going on 30,
sure.
but like in Debo and Gallup's case, they've had injuries. I think Gallup, Debo, McLaurin, Ertz have all played their best football already.
Yeah, so and Ertz was resurgent this season. Late in important games, not over the totality of a game, but late in spots where you need 3rd and 4th down. He was that guy, and we'll see if he can do that. Does he still have that step to beat somebody 5 yards down the field the way he did for Daniels numerous times this season?
That's a concern. Daniels' frailty didn't burn him last year, but my guess is it does burn him this year, and he misses some time. I just think their weapons are just all Austin Eckler, has he played his best football? I think he has. Zach Ertz, has he played his best football? I think he has. McLaurin, has he played his best football? I think he has. Debo Samuel, has he played his best football? I think he has. Michael Gallup, has he played his best? I think he has. So that's my concern. I think that, you got a young quarterback, but you got some older weapons. And then I don't think they're special at all off the edge. I mean, Dietrich Wise is almost like a 5 technique and a 3-4 defense. He's one of your defensive ends. He's slow. Dorrance Armstrong, okay. Cleveland Farrell, I don't see anything there. To me, they are definitely a good edge rusher away. And you got some age on your defense. Bobby Wagner's old. So, we'll see. I like Washington. I think they're a good team, but I have them kind of sophomore slumping down to the 5 hole. All right, so that gives us, now we're at Detroit at 2, and I think Detroit is in for a major fall.
Yeah.
Detroit's in for a major fall. I don't think anybody realizes how much they've lost. Detroit is I think going to take a gigantic backslide. Okay, here's why. You lose Ben Johnson, your offensive coordinator, to the Bears. Okay, so now you have a brand new offensive coordinator in John Morton coming in. Okay, you lose your defensive coordinator, Aaron Glenn, who's also really a feisty, tough guy and a leader. You lose him to the head coach of the New York Jets. So now you lose your OC and your DC.
Brutal.
That's hard to do. Then you also have, a totally different vibe, I think, going into camp than you had going into the playoffs because of how Goff wet the bed in the playoffs. I mean, he looked like Jared Goff. It was like the clock struck midnight and he became a pumpkin. So then you go into the draft, and on defense they got Tyreek Williams, run stuffer, behind DJ Reader, but not a pass rusher. Then you got this Ahmed Hussein from Boise. He's not a bad high effort edge rusher. You got Dan Jackson, a safety from Georgia, who I like a little bit. They did sign DJ Reed and Avonte Maddox in the secondary and Rock Ya-Sin from the Niners. But I think defensively, Hutchinson, Davenport, DJ Reader, Aleem McNeil. I don't know, man. Linebacker, you got Jack Campbell, Derek Barnes, Alec Anzalone. That's not bad. It's not awesome. Secondary, you have Brian Branch, Terrion Arnold, Kirby Joseph, got the extension, DJ Reed, Amik Robertson. I kind of like DJ Reed added to that secondary. But, overall, I would say the Lions lost their coordinator and didn't add anything super special on defense. And then offensively, they lost their coordinator, probably the best coordinator in the game. And what did they had? You've got Amon-Ra, Jameson Williams, Tim Patrick. You drafted Isaac Tesla from Arkansas. They added Ronnie Bell. I don't love their receivers. There's talk about maybe trading Jameson Williams. It's a good offensive line. There's no question. It's a good offensive line. You have Laporta. Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery. That's a good backfield. I like Detroit. Don't get me wrong. I just think that Detroit's going to miss their coordinators. And on offense, I think that could make them quite a bit worse. And I just think that defensively, they're pretty good, but not great. I didn't think they had a great draft. I didn't think they had a great free agency, and then losing both coordinators. I like Detroit to backslide. I have Detroit falling from grace down to the 6 hole.
I've got them at 5 here. And remember, Larry, that game against Minnesota goes another way, and Detroit is the 5 seed in the NFC at the end of last season. They went from having the bye and the 1 seed to in that game. And yes, they were clearly the better team than Minnesota in week 18, but that's a fine line there. So yes, we remember them as the 1 seed, but you also recall what happened to Goff in that divisional game against Washington. I've got them as a 5. I've got them as a playoff team, but I just remember what happened to Nick Sirianni and the Eagles 2 seasons ago. They're in the Super Bowl. They lose the Super Bowl. Gannon and Steichen leave as the coordinators, both. You lose both coordinators, that next season takes a hit. I don't care who you are. Belichick did a nice job in New England of sustaining what happened when he was losing coordinators, but you lose both in the same offseason. That is a lot in the building that you got to put back together. Meetings are run by those guys, and they're gone. And unless you were grooming the entire season to be prepared for that, that's a lot heading into the season. And we have to ask ourselves, was it just injuries? When we have that Washington game in our mind in that divisional round, was that just because this team was injured, or is that an indication of what you're going to get from them moving forward? The Hutchinson thing, according to everybody, Hutchinson was going to play in the Super Bowl had they made it there. Hutchinson was going to be ready. There was even talks of potentially the NFC Championship had they won that game against Washington. I'm just not sure about it. I like you, the DJ Reed thing. That one hit me like, okay, there you go. But not enough players overall in the draft to begin with. And I'm just with you. I don't love things. Things went well for them. They played incredibly well, but things went well. And both coordinators too tough. I think a lot of people are going to slot Detroit. A lot of people are going to see Detroit as, oh, okay, Detroit should be the best team in the NFC based on what happened last season. But too many teams have done too much around them, and losing those 2 coordinators is going to sting. That is going to sting.
Well, and I don't believe in Dan Campbell. I really don't. And as far as Detroit's concerned, I think they're going to be the team that people, watch out for Detroit. Watch out for Detroit. And then we're going to look up, and their whole window is going to open and close, and they're never going to win.
Yep. And again, because you're talking about a team that was in the NFC Championship 2 seasons ago and then not there last season. So that's how you really have to judge it.
Yeah. So number 1 on the list for here is Philly, and I'm keeping Philly number 1. As far as I'm concerned, Howie Roseman is proven that he's the best GM going right now, and the Eagles are number 1. They just keep getting better and better and better and better. And if we need to review, we can review if you want. Obviously they won the Super Bowl. They got a great GM. I hate Sirianni, but whatever. Vic Fangio has done a really nice job as their defensive coordinator. They've got Kevin Patullo as their offensive coordinator. Let's just go through what's new. They're really good at receiver with AJ Brown and Jahan Dotson and Devontae Smith. They're really good at receiver. And by the way, they added a guy that I saw at the Niner local pro day who I thought was really a sleeper. His name was Giles Jackson.
Yeah.
And the Eagles signed Giles Jackson, who's from Antioch, as an undrafted player. So I love that addition. I mean, that was a great one. Then offensive line, it's a great offensive line. I mean, Mailata, Dickerson, Juergens, Tyler Steen, Lane Johnson. And then you got good backups. I mean, Trevor Keegan was a good draft choice in the 5th round. In the 24 draft, they drafted Drew Kendall. They added Miles Hinton. They traded for Kenyon Green. They got Holland Pierce after the draft. There's a lot to like about, and they drafted Cameron Williams from Texas in the 6th round. So, I mean, they had a really good offensive line, and then they added 4 or 5 extra linemen who are all pretty interesting. So they got a stacked line. Will they trade Dallas Goedert? I don't know, but they've got Dallas Goedert at tight end. They also have Cam Latu in that mix as well. Jalen Hurts, Tanner McKee, Kyle McCord, DTR. It's a damn good quarterback room right there. Love that quarterback room. You added A.J. Dillon as a gigantic horse of a back to go with Saquon Barkley. That was really nice. You took Montrell Johnson out of Florida and Shunderick Powell out of Central Arkansas. Powell's an awesome return guy. Johnson's a really solid running back. You got both those guys after the draft as undrafted players. So, I mean, you got a loaded running back room. You're really a little thin at receiver or at tight end because there's not a lot behind Goddard. But you got a loaded offensive line. You're really deep at wide receiver. You're really deep at quarterback. So Philly, to me, on offense looks really good unless Goddard goes down, and then they could have a hole. On defense, Nolan Smith, Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, Moro Ajomo, and then you still have Bryce Huff. You have Byron Young, Thomas Booker. They signed Patrick Johnson and Josh Uche. They drafted Ty Robinson out of Nebraska. He's one of my favorites. They took Jihad Campbell and Smail Mondon from college, Mondon from Georgia, Campbell from Bama. They signed Azeez Ojulari. They drafted Antoine Powell-Ryland. I mean, that's a great pick in the 6th round. You got to be kidding me. Out of Vautech. Maxon Hook and BJ Mays, Andrew Makuba, Mac Williams added to the secondary. They signed Adoree Jackson. I mean, this team is freaking loaded. They are absolutely loaded. They're the best team in football, and they got better. They absolutely. I mean, you've got really good offensive line, really good defensive line, depth all over the place. Yeah, Philly's the best team.
Well, I got to just take them a rung down. I think the division is coming for them. I think the Cowboys and Washington's going to have something to say this season. I already told you Washington is in the 1 spot for me in the power rankings, so Philly can't be there. I've got them at 2. It's not that dramatic, but look at this team. You're remembering the Super Bowl for what it was, 40-22 against the Chiefs, but key players in that game, Milton Williams, Josh Sweat, Mekhi Becton, CJ Gardner-Johnson are all gone. So you talked about the additions. Yes, Larry, but let's at least address, since we're dinging the Lions for what they lost, we've got to say here, the Eagles lost some pretty significant players. If you're
let's go through that list again.
Okay. So Milton Williams, who's in New England, and realistically,
they got rid of Milton Williams. They added Ty Robinson. Okay.
Correct. And who had, by the way, that was the fastest 40 time of any of the D linemen in Indy at the combine. So yes, they love it. All right. Josh Sweat, who's in Arizona now.
Sweat, but you added Josh
Uche, who the Chiefs did like also. A lot of people like the Uche thing. We'll see. Is that just something that we're giving Kansas City credit
Azeez Ojulari?
Yes, absolutely. And then Mekhi Becton, who had a tremendous resurgence in Philly with Jeff Stoutland as the offensive line coach. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you did. Yeah, that one's you're gonna miss him.
Yeah, you are. Again, and again, for a team that, yes, you love Mailata, but remember, Lane Johnson, how long is he going to play? I understand he's coming back, but how long are you going to get elite Lane Johnson out of this team? So it could slide. It could make a difference. And you know what we didn't even mention also? What if the tush push isn't there? Does that cost the Eagles a game? Can we say that that cost them one game? I mean, that's all it would have to do to sort of drop this a little bit, right?
There's no indications, though, that the league has tabled it, so they're going to have further.
But they're going to bring it back this month. They're going to talk about it again. And it seems to gain, there's a little bit. I mean, someone's going to come up with this is a health concern. Like I could just see it. And I do think then Sirianni will go into the lab and come up with something else that's slightly different that makes a difference. But if right now they don't have that play, just say one game. Just say that changes the outcome of one game. That's all it takes. So that's really it. And they've got the third most difficult in the NFC strength of schedule if you go to a projected win total for who they have to play next season. So that's going to play a difference. I love that they gave Saquon money. They gave Zach Bond money. That makes sense. But those losses, the list, the CJ Gardner-Johnson, now I understand, look, their second pick in the draft is going to fill that hole most likely. But it just takes a little bit. And as I said, the NFC East, you don't just slot in last year's winner in the NFC East. For some reason, for 20 years, it hasn't happened back-to-back. Super Bowl regression, I don't know. This could happen. This team, Howie gets credit for every name that shows up, no matter what. He's not going to hit on all of them, Larry. It's not going. They're not all going to turn out well. So it just takes a little bit. And again, I know we didn't talk a lot about them, but the Cowboys are going to be better. The Cowboys are going to be a better team. And when the Cowboys are relevant in this division, it's a tougher road for the Eagles, period.
To the Eagles, every team has.
Oh, and Kellen Moore. Wait. Kellen Moore, their offensive coordinator is the head coach of the Saints now. That's going to play a factor.
Yeah, I would say every team has two or three guys they can't lose. For the Eagles, I think those guys are Dallas Goedert because they don't have a great backup. Tight end.
I was going to say they do like Grant Calcaterra, Larry. That is the back they've got because they played games without Goddard last season. They did play games without him last season. They got him back for the playoffs, and he was incredible. He had the best play against the Packers by far of any Eagle offensively, but they do like what they get in Calcaterra, who had a tremendous play during the regular season. He picked up a fumble by Goddard and actually recovered it that helped them win that Washington game, the first one. Calcaterra is someone that's why these talks are going the way they are, because they do have confidence in Calcaterra.
Okay. I personally don't have tons of confidence in him, but I'll say this. I also don't have tons of confidence in their backs behind Saquon. Dylan is a power back, but he doesn't have a lot of speed.
And they lost Gainwell. That was the guy behind him. They did lose
You lost Gainwell. The rest of the backs, Will Shipley, Avery Williams. I like Montrell Johnson, but to me, if they lost Goddard, if they lost Saquon, if they lost Jalen Carter, then those are their three guys that would potentially set them back.
And I don't think you mentioned Jalix Hunt on the defensive line, who also had a nice Super Bowl.
Yeah,
that was
Houston Baptist.
Yep.
He's a nice player. Now you mentioned Dallas. I personally with Dallas.
Where does Vegas have him here on this list? I think Vegas has Dallas at. I just want to say they're right outside here. I think they're at 12. I think they have them behind the Cardinals at 12.
I don't like Dallas. One, you brought in Joe Milton, so now you've got this kind of like sideshow backup quarterback.
Sure, interesting.
I don't really love the running backs. Jaden Blue is fast, but he fumbled 9 times at Texas. Miles Sanders is done. Javonte Williams is not the same player as he was before the injury. So they have better backs than they had last year, but I still don't think they really have their back. I really love the Cowboys offensive line with Tyler Booker, Cooper Beebe, Tyler Smith on the inside. I think the interior offensive line is going to be a major strength for them. But then, even their receiver wise, they traded a high pick for Jonathan Mingo. You've got Jalen Tolbert, CeeDee Lamb. They've got Turpin. I'm not crazy about the receivers. And then defensively, Mozzie Smith, not much. I will say this. I thought the Cowboys got a couple of the best draft picks. They took Jay Toyia in the 7th round out of UCLA. And Jay Toyia is absolutely a monster against the run inside. So I think Jay Toyia is going to help them. But DeMarvion Overshown still hurt. Trevon Diggs still hurt. They just have there's a lot of unknowns there. Is Mozzie Smith a player? Is he not? So I think Dallas had some interesting players for sure. I love Ezaraku, Shavon Revel, the corner from East Carolina, is a good player. Shamar James, a decent linebacker. They added some decent players, but I would still say they're going to miss the playoffs. Well, I think they're kind of a circus.
Okay, we got to mention Mike McCarthy. Obviously, they moved on from McCarthy. You got Schottenheimer as the head coach now. But I've got him at 8, which means they're at 8. So that's outside looking in, but close and vying for a playoff spot. This team's going to have, Dak theoretically is healthy for an entire season, or at least, 15 games, let's say. That's going to help. And at least, you don't love the names, but at least they addressed the running game. And maybe they made better additions on the offensive line than truly the actual backs. But if their line is dominant, which we know, Larry, over time, the Giants have given us tremendous offensive lines. This team was predicated on running the ball and running it well and leading the conference in rushing with Ezekiel Elliott, back with DeMarco Murray. I mean, this team knows how to run the ball. Marion Barber. I mean, they've had names that aren't necessarily spectacular anywhere else, but are tremendous behind this line. If the Cowboys can run the ball, they're going to make a difference in this division. And all they have to do, if they're competitive with Washington and Philly, they're going to make a difference. And I see them as better, and I still think CeeDee Lamb is elite. And Dak Prescott plays his best games against the Eagles when you look back at it. And that's what it's going to come down to. Is Dak that guy again? I like what they've done. And is it going to be enough with Schottenheimer, or is this going to be Jerry Jones press conferences after every game, and we're going to be wondering what's happening with them? I just see it as an on year. If last year was an off year for the Cowboys, I see this as an on year for them.
Ben Diesel is a brand new member of the channel there. There you go. Way to go, Ben Diesel. We also have this one. Sirianni gets carried by good coordinators.
Look, let's just say this much. Delegation is important in life, and he replaced 2 great coordinators with 2 better coordinators. Took him a year to do it, but Vic Fangio is the reason they won the Super Bowl. That's going in that direction, trusting his defense with Fangio. That made the difference, and good for him. He let Fangio do it, and that's that. Sirianni comes off as a tool, and that's the problem. And he says too much, and he's yelling. He has a terrible opening press conference when he's named head coach. Then he's yelling at the fans in Philadelphia during a win. I mean, it's tough to follow, but he somehow gets it done. And remember this, in his first season, he wore a fuck Dallas shirt that went horribly wrong. They lost that game. So, but guess what? He's a Super Bowl champion. There's a statue of Peterson. Will there be one of Sirianni? I don't know, but he won the Super Bowl. What are we going to say?
All right. So we're done. So the top 10 according to the odds, were Eagles, Lions, Commanders, 1, 2, 3, Niners, Packers, Rams, 4, 5, 6, Bucks, Vikings, Bears, 7, 8, 9, Seahawks, number 10. I have Philly 1, Tampa 2, Rams 3, Niners 4, Commanders 5, Lions 6, Packers 7, Seahawks 8, Cardinals 9, Vikings 10. And Sammy, you're 1 through 10.
Yeah, I've got the Vikings out and the Cardinals out. Washington, number 1. The Eagles at 2, Rams 3, Niners 4, Lions 5, Bucks with Baker at 6, Packers 7, Cowboys at 8, and then Seahawks at 9, and the Falcons at 10.
There you go. So a little bit more belief in Dallas. I will say this, we didn't really talk about the Falcons. Let's touch on the Falcons for a second, because I think that they're kind of an interesting football team in a lot of ways. One, I'm a big believer in Raheem Morris. I like Raheem Morris. He's a very good coach. You also have the controversy from draft weekend about Jazz Ulbrich going after Shador, costing his dad $100,000, costing the Falcons $250,000. I mean, something says to me that Jazz Ulbrich probably is not. Life in his world is probably not too good right now. Because Dad hates
story. I love
Dad
that
hates
story.
you. Mom hates you.
Him like that. No, I'm sorry. But I love Michael Penix in his second season. And I think whether Kirk Cousins is there or not, I like something about Atlanta, knowing that they discovered that they got the quarterback right. And it really came down to that Washington game last season. If they find a way to win that game, week 17, they're a playoff team, most likely. So they were really in it until the end. I like it. I do like Atlanta. Again, third easiest strength of schedule, by the way, in the NFC as well for them.
Now, I really like Tampa. I've got Tampa in the 2-hole, but I will say this, even though I don't have Atlanta in the top 10, they could be a wild card team as far as a surprise team. Why? Just because, I mean, look at what you got going here. You got Drake London, Darnell Mooney, Ray McLeod at receiver. Okay, that's not bad. They added Jamal Agnew. They added Nick Nash. So they added some receivers. Okay, so then offensive line-wise, I think this has been one of the better lines. Now, they lost Drew Dahlman, but you have Jake Matthews, Bergeron, Lindstrom, and McGarry on the right side. You have Kyle Pitts and Charlie Warner at tight end. Okay. You got Penix at quarterback. You're probably going to trade Kirk Cousins for something.
Probably.
You signed Easton Stick to be the backup quarterback. You got Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier running the rock. That's not bad. I mean, like Bijan. Bijan's a good back. There's no question. And then defensively, that's not bad. I mean, you got Ruka Rororo, David Onyemata, the former Saint. So that's the inside. And then you got Jalen Walker and James Pierce off the edges.
That was huge. What they did, the trade in the first round, that's huge. And I like to pick up a Leonard Floyd also. I don't know where you stand on Leonard Floyd, Larry, but I like that.
I mean, he's kind of a guy he sells out for stats at this point. But I do think that he can help them. Leonard Floyd, I think, is a good player. They also got two really good safeties in Xavier Watts out of Notre Dame and Billy Bowman from Oklahoma. I think both those guys could really help their secondary. So, you got some rushers up front with some speed. Yeah, you definitely have some guys who can pick off passes on the back end in Bowman and Watts. You got a pretty strong run game with Bijan Robinson, and you got Penix, who's now in year 2, and he was kind of brought along slowly, so probably won't have that sophomore slump. If anything, he's probably an ascending player. So the Falcons could be. If you told me the Falcons kind of came out of nowhere, that wouldn't shock me. They might be the wild card team. In the entire discussion, just. What team we're not anticipating that could come out of nowhere and surprise? It could be the Atlanta Falcons. All right, Sammy, good stuff, man. Tell people about your channel. Tell people, everybody hit like and subscribe over here. And then of course, Sammy's here as well. Give a like and subscribe to the Thinking Out Loud show.
Yes, absolutely, Larry. It's Thinking Out Loud. Siciliano and Sam is the page itself. And you can get us. You can check out the podcast Thinking Out Loud. And again, it's with Andrew Siciliano. Check us out every week. And then the YouTube page at Thinking Out Loud, Siciliano and Sam. Please check us out, Larry. We love being a part of this page. We love doing this with you. And it's just the NFL. It never stops. I mean, it's never top of mind.
Oh, it's awesome. We never run out of things to talk about. We'll do it again next Monday. Thanks to Sam. Thanks to all of you guys. Hit like and subscribe on your way out the door. Thanks to our sponsors, Claudaddy Arcades, LearnKey Upskill Academy, and of course, Pig and a Pickle. Thanks to Sam. I'll take the next half hour off. We're gonna do some stuff later today with the great Brian Baldinger, who's going to be on the show. We'll bring that to the channel tomorrow. We'll debut that tomorrow, but we're going to tape that in a few hours. And then check me out later today. I believe Grant Cohn and I are going to stream later today. If not, me and John Lund later tonight. So have a great night great day for everybody. Thanks to everybody. Thanks to Sammy. Thanks to all of you. Peace.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of.